The problem with being the family's safety net is that eventually everyone starts to treat you like a floor mat. I've spent the last 3 years quietly funneling over $60,000 into my family's bank accounts. My mother's property taxes, my brother Anthony's medical bills, my sister Justice's mortgage. I did it in secret, to protect their pride, to keep them from feeling small. But on Christmas Day, my mother, Sienna Reed, decided to repay that debt by trying to humiliate me in front of my own children. My name is Ella Reed. I'm 34, and I restore rare books. It's a job that requires a steady hand and the ability to find beauty in things that are structurally failing, which, looking back, is exactly how I treated my family. Last Christmas, the air in my dining room was thick with the smell of roasted ham and a tension I'd been trying to ignore for months. Sienna stood at the head of the table. She lifted her glass like she was about to offer a blessing, but she looked right at my children, Madison and Isaac, and said, "We're not babysitting for you anymore, Ella." To that. The room went tomb quiet. Beside me, Reed, my senior beagle, let out a low, vibrating huff from under the table. He has a sixth sense for adrenaline, and mine was currently spiking. "And no more house repairs either," Sienna added, her voice growing louder, almost proud. "I'm done bailing you out of every little mess you create." I remember staring at her, my fork still in my hand. Madison was frozen. Isaac was halfway through reaching for a dinner roll. DeAndre, my brother-in-law, looked down at his plate like he'd known this was coming. Justice, she gave me that tight little smile people use when they want front-row seats to a wreck. "Seriously?" I asked. My voice was barely a whisper. Sienna shrugged, smoothing her silk blouse. "You've been leaning on this family for too long. Maybe this is how you finally learn to stand on your own." What she didn't realize was that I had been standing on my own for years while holding all of them up on my shoulders. She wanted to set boundaries to feel powerful, but she was about to find out what happens when the person paying the bills finally closes the account. I stood up. Reed stood with me, a silent, solid anchor. I took my kids' coats and told my mother that if she was done pretending generosity was the same thing as control, then I was done letting her perform at my expense. I walked out before the pie even hit the table. By the next morning, my phone was exploding with 36 missed calls, and before that day was over, one comment from me on social media would crack open every lie they had been hiding behind. Before I tell you what she said after I stood up and the screenshots I posted that changed everything, tell me, what time is it for you right now and where are you watching from? I want to see how far this story reaches. By the time I pulled into my driveway, the silence in the car was heavy. Madison and Isaac didn't ask why we left before dessert. They were used to the Sienna storms that usually ended in me apologizing for things I hadn't done. But this time, I wasn't apologizing. I got the kids tucked in with a promise, a new adventure. Then I sat in my studio. My phone was already beginning to hum. Justice texted, "Ella, that was beyond dramatic. Mom is in tears. Call her." Anthony chimed in, "I can still look at that leaky pipe, but you need to cool it. Family is family." I didn't reply. I opened my laptop to a file labeled Read Archival Project. To anyone else, it looked like work. To me, it was a ledger of every time I had abandoned my own security to patch their sinking ship. April 24, Sienna's property taxes, $4,200. She told the neighbors she won a settlement. August 24, Anthony's medical deductible, $3,500. He told friends the hospital waived the fee. November 25, Justice's mortgage bridge, $2,800. She told DeAndre it was a bonus from work. I realized then, my silence hadn't been an act of love. It was an act of enabling. I looked at Reed, resting his chin on my foot. He looked up with those deep, soulful beagle eyes, let out a long sigh and closed them. He knew the house was quiet for the first time in years. I took a screenshot of the tax transfer, then the mortgage payment. I didn't post them yet. I waited. I knew Sienna. She always preferred a public stage. And sure enough, at 1:12 a.m., the notification popped up. Sienna had posted a photo of my empty dining room to her 1,200 followers. The caption, "Some daughters only see family as a burden until the help stops. Boundaries are the only way to deal with entitlement. Pray for our family." The comments rolled in. "So sorry, Sienna. Boundaries are hard." I felt a cold, sharp clarity. I wasn't the girl who took their hits anymore. I'm a restorer, and it was time to strip away the rot. I hit comment on her post. "Boundaries are interesting, Mom," I wrote. "Since we're being public, let's be accurate. I paid your property taxes in April so the county wouldn't seize the house. Should I post that receipt or the one from Justice's mortgage?" The silence that followed my comment was deafening. For 3 minutes, the likes on Sienna's post froze. Then the notification bubble began to scream. Justice was the first to break. "Ella, delete this now. You're being incredibly immature. Family matters are private." I didn't blink. I replied under her, "Private? Mom made it public at 1:12 a.m. I'm just providing the footnotes." "By the way, Justice," I added, "did DeAndre ever find out that work bonus you used for the mortgage actually came from my savings? Or should I tag him?" The typing indicator appeared, vanished, appeared again. She was spiraling. Beside me, Reed shifted in his sleep, his paws paddling as he chased something in a dream. I envied him. He lived in a world of simple truths. My world was built on parchment and old glue, and right now the adhesive was failing. At 2 a.m., the phone rang. Anthony. "Ella, what the hell are you doing?" His voice was thick with sleep and irritation. "Mom is hysterical. She says you're weaponizing money to hurt her." "I'm not weaponizing anything, Anthony," I said, my voice eerily calm. "I'm correcting the record. She told the world I'm a burden. I'm just showing them the receipts." "You know how she is," he argued. "Just take the post down." "We tried talking like adults at dinner, Anthony. You sat there and watched her humiliate me in front of my kids. You didn't say a word. Did you forget I paid your $3,500 deductible last August? Because I didn't." A long, heavy pause. I could hear him breathing. The pride he wore like armor was cracking. "I'll pay you back," he muttered. "I don't want the money, Anthony. I want the truth. Don't call me again until you're ready to tell it." I hung up. I went back to the post. Sienna had deleted it, but in the age of the internet, deleted is a fairy tale. My Aunt Joanne, the one person Sienna actually feared, had already seen it. Then a message from an unknown number. DeAndre, Justice's husband. "Ella, is what you said true about the mortgage?" I took a deep breath. This was the moment of no return. I remembered Justice's smug smile while my children watched me get torn down. I attached the bank confirmation of the $2,800 transfer. "I'm sorry, DeAndre," I wrote, "but I'm done lying for people who wouldn't even pass me the salt if it meant they had to admit I was hungry." The weight in my chest didn't disappear, but for the first time, it felt like my weight, not theirs. I looked at the 18th century Bible on my workbench, waiting for its spine to be rebuilt. Some things have to be completely broken before they can be made whole again. And let's look at Reed. He's officially the dreamer of simple truths. While the Reed family was busy burning their bridges in a digital bonfire, Reed was busy chasing something pure in his sleep. He knows that once the spine of a lie is snapped, the story is finally over. If you're ready to see the aftermath when DeAndre finally confronts Justice, hit that like button. The fallout from a single truth is rarely a clean break. It's a slow, jagged tearing. By 6 a.m., my house was no longer a sanctuary. I sat in my kitchen, watching Reed pace the floor. His nose was low, his tail tucked. Beagles don't just hear your voice, they hear your heart rate. Then my phone rang. It wasn't a text this time. It was Sienna.
I picked up on the third ring. I didn't say hello. I waited. "You've destroyed this family, Ella." Her voice was a sharp, trembling whisper. "I hope you're happy. Justice and DeAndre are screaming. Anthony is refusing to come to Sunday dinner, all because you couldn't keep your pride in check." My pride? I leaned back, watching a bird land on the frozen feeder. "Mom, you stood up in front of my children and told them I was a burden. You didn't just hurt me, you tried to poison their view of their mother so you could feel like a saint. I didn't destroy anything. I just stopped holding up the walls you were kicking." "I was helping you," she shrieked. "I babysit. I make sure the kids have a grandmother who cares." "You babysit twice a month so you can take photos for Facebook and tell everyone how exhausted you are. Meanwhile, I'm the one who paid the $4,000 to keep your lights on. Is that the help you're talking about?" "You owe me that," she snapped, the mask slipping entirely. "I raised you. A few $1,000s is nothing compared to what a mother gives." "Then we're even," I said, my voice dropping to a cold, hard floor. "Because I'm done paying. No more taxes, no more mortgage bridges for Justice, and Anthony can find a new bank for his medical bills." I hung up before she could respond. I looked at Reed. He nudged my hand with his cold, wet nose. "Go," he seemed to say. "Do the work." I walked into my studio and picked up a bone folder. I had a 17th century ledger on my desk, full of names of people long dead who owed debts that would never be paid. I realized then the mess Sienna talked about wasn't mine. It was theirs. I had been the glue, the stitching, the archival tape holding a disintegrating book. But you can't restore something that doesn't want to be fixed. Then the doorbell rang, a loud, aggressive chime. Reed let on the sharp, protective bay. Through the frosted glass, I saw a familiar silhouette. It wasn't my mother. It was Justice, and she wasn't alone.
The silhouette against the frosted glass was unmistakable. Justice always stood with her shoulders squared, a habit from years of trying to look taller than the mess she claimed I was. But there was a second, broader shadow behind her, DeAndre. Reed was already there, his hackles raised in a stiff ridge along his back. He knew this wasn't a friendly visit. I opened the door just a crack. The winter air rushed in, smelling of damp pavement and the expensive perfume Justice wore like armor. "Ella, we need to talk, now," she snapped. Her eyes were rimmed with red, her makeup perfectly intact despite the chaos I knew was happening in her kitchen. "It's 7 a.m., Justice," I said, leaning against the frame. "The kids are still asleep. If you're here to scream, do it on the sidewalk." DeAndre stepped forward, his face a mask of exhausted hurt. "I just want to know one thing, Ella. The $2,800. You said it was for the mortgage. Justice told me it was a gift from your mother. Who's lying?" I looked at my sister. Her jaw tightened. She was pleading with her eyes, not for forgiveness, but for me to resume the role of the silent protector. "I have the bank confirmation, DeAndre," I said quietly. "I sent it from my business account directly to Justice. It wasn't from Mom. Mom hasn't had that kind of liquid cash since 2022. "You bitch," Justice hissed, her voice a jagged blade. "You're really going to do this? You're going to blow up my marriage because you're jealous that Mom likes you more?" I almost laughed. Jealous? "Justice, I've been paying for the privilege of being the family outcast. If Mom likes you more, it's because you let her believe she's the one providing for you. I'm the one actually doing it." "We're leaving," DeAndre said, grabbing Justice by the arm. He looked at me with a pained kind of respect. "Thanks for the truth, Ella. Finally." As they turned, Justice spun back, her face contorted. "Don't expect a cent back. You want to be independent? Fine. You're on your own. Completely." She slammed her car door so hard it echoed down the quiet street. I shut my door and leaned my forehead against the cool wood. My heart was hammering, but there was a strange bubbling sense of relief. The invisible threads I'd been weaving had finally snapped.
Reed nudged my knee, his tail giving a single, cautious wag. "Just us, Reed," I whispered. But I was wrong. My phone chimed. Not a text, a security alert. Unauthorized access attempt. Someone was trying to get into my digital archives. The blue light of my phone screen felt like a physical chill. Unauthorized access attempt. Someone had tried my password 3 times from a device in Cranston, my mother's neighborhood. I didn't need to be a detective to know it was Sienna. She wasn't trying to steal my money, she was trying to delete the history of her own dependents. Reed sensed the shift in my posture. He let out a sharp single buff and stood between me and the studio door. Beagles are scent hounds, but they're also sensitive to the smell of a threat. He knew the house was under siege, even if the attackers were miles away behind a screen. I walked into my studio and locked the door. I triggered the 2-factor authentication. My phone buzzed immediately with a code. I moved the Reed archival project to an encrypted cloud drive. Then I saw it. A new notification on my business's public Facebook page. User, anonymous neighbor. Is it true the owner of Reed Book Restoration is a scammer? I heard she's been taking money from her elderly mother. Sad to see a local business owner act this way. My stomach did a slow, nauseating flip. Sienna wasn't just trying to hide the truth. She was going for my throat. She knew my reputation as a restorer was built on trust. If she could paint me as a thief, she could ruin my livelihood. "She really is going to burn the whole house down," I whispered. Reed hopped up onto the velvet chair next to my desk, looking at me with those wise, heavy-lidded eyes. He'd seen me work through the night, but never like this. I didn't delete the comment. As a book restorer, you never just cover up a stain, you treat it. I took a deep breath. "Hello," I typed back. "Since you're interested in transparency, I've made my family transfer ledger a public document on my website's blog. Anyone interested in seeing where the scammed money actually went, from taxes to mortgage bailouts, is welcome to read the receipts." I hit post. Within seconds, my phone began to vibrate so hard it slid across the workbench. Anthony. I ignored it. Sienna. I ignored that too. Then a text from Justice. "You are a monster, Ella. Mom is in the ER with chest pains because of you. Happy now?" A year ago, I would have dropped everything and raced there, checkbook in hand. But then I looked at Reed. He wasn't panicked. He was waiting for me to lead. "She's not in the ER, Reed," I said. "She's at her kitchen table, waiting for me to blink." I picked up the phone and dialed the hospital in Cranston. "Hi, I'm checking on a patient. Sienna Reed?" The nurse's voice was crisp. "I don't have a patient by that name, ma'am." I put the phone down. The last thread of guilt finally snapped. The silence that followed my phone call to the hospital was the loudest thing I had ever heard. Mom wasn't in the ER. She was playing her favorite card, the health scare, to force me back into my role as the family's emotional shock absorber. I sat in my studio for an hour, just watching the dust motes dance over a 19th century ledger. Beside me, Reed had settled into his duty position, chin resting on my foot, his heavy beagle ears draped over my slippers. He wasn't sleeping, he was monitoring. At 9:15 a.m., the front door rattled. It wasn't a polite knock. "Ella, open this door, I know you're in there." It was Justice, again, but this time her voice was pitched high with real panic. I didn't open the door. I grabbed my phone and sent a text. "I called the hospital, Justice. Mom isn't there. Stop lying for her. Go home." I saw her look at her phone, her face turning a deep, blotchy red. She didn't text back. She just kicked the bottom of my door and stormed to her car. "She's losing it, Reed," I whispered. "The script is failing." I went back to my workbench and opened an email from DeAndre. Subject, "I'm out." Ella, I moved into a hotel. Justice confessed. Not about the money, she couldn't admit that, but she confessed that Mom told her to lie to me. Thank you for being the only person in that family with a spine. I felt a pang of sadness for him and a strange sense of vindication. Then my business phone rang, a gravelly, familiar voice. Ella Reed, this is Aunt Joanne. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. I saw your comment before Mom deleted it. I've lived next to your mother for 40 years. I know how to spot her handwriting even in a digital comment section. Don't you apologize, she interrupted. Mom's been playing the martyr on my porch for a decade. Every time I asked why she didn't just ask you for help, she'd sigh and say, "Oh, Ella has so little, I couldn't possibly." Meanwhile, I'm looking at her new sunroom and wondering where the money came from. It came from me, I said, my voice finally cracking. I know it did, and I want you to know I just messaged the neighborhood group chat. I told them exactly who paid for that sunroom. But don't thank me yet, honey. Your mother is packing a bag. She says she's coming to your house to make things right. In mom speak, that means she's coming to burn your porch down. You keep that door locked. I looked at the clock. 40 minutes. Reed was already at the door, his tail a stiff antenna.
The 40-minute drive from Cranston felt like a countdown. I spent that time doing the only thing that keeps my hands from shaking. I worked. I was cleaning the foxing off an 1860s family Bible, a book that had survived wars, yet was more stable than my own lineage. Reed was my early warning system. He didn't bark at first, he just stood by the window, his tail a stiff antenna. Then he let out a low, mournful bay. I looked out. Mom's white SUV was idling at the curb. She sat there for 5 minutes, rehearsing. When she stepped out, she wasn't in her distressed mother cardigan. She was in a sharp black coat, carrying a designer bag I knew for a fact I had paid for. She didn't knock, she pounded. "Ella, open this door. I know Joanne called you." I stayed in my studio with the door locked. "You've humiliated me, Ella, your own mother, after everything I sacrificed." I walked to the hallway, speaking through the wood. "You sacrificed my savings, Mom. You sacrificed Justice's marriage. You didn't keep us together. You kept us under your thumb." "I was protecting your pride," she shrieked. "I told people I was helping you so they wouldn't look down on a single mother." I almost laughed. A favor? By telling the world I was a charity case while I paid your taxes? That's a smear campaign to keep me from ever leaving. The pounding stopped. Then, the jingle of keys. My blood went cold. I'd forgotten the emergency key in the fake rock. The lock turned. The door swung open. Mom stood in my entryway, a mask of cold fury. She looked at Reed, who let out a sharp, protective bark. "Get that dog away from me," she snapped. "He lives here, Mom. You don't. Give me the key." "I'm not leaving until you delete those posts and tell Joanne you were confused." "No." She stepped forward, hand raised like I was still 8 years old. But then she stopped. She looked into my studio, at the hours of labor, the rare tools. She saw the life I had built without her permission. "You think you're so much better because of this hobby," she spat, "but without family, you're nothing." I'd rather be alone with a dog than surrounded by people who view me as an ATM with a pulse. "Give me the key, Mom, now, or I'm calling the police." She realized the guilt button she'd been pressing for 30 years was no longer connected to anything. She threw the key. It skittered across the floor. "Fine," she whispered, "but don't you dare come crying to me when Anthony loses his business. That's on your head now." The sharp slam of a front door, the fading roar of an engine, the heavy, exhausted thump of a dog sitting down. My heart hammered against my ribs as I opened the business page. Anthony was right. It wasn't just a bad review. It was a professional assassination attempt. The screen filled with photos of rare books, volumes I recognized, but they looked like they had been through a shredder. deep gouges in the leather, spines crudely taped with duct tape, pages stained with coffee. The caption, "Warning, Ella Reed is a fraud. I brought her a first edition Dickens, and this is how it came back. She's unstable. Stay away." The reviewer was A. Miller, a name I'd never had on my client list. "They're trying to kill my career, Reed," I whispered. Reed let out a soft, concerned whimper. He could feel the cold dread radiating off me. If my reputation died, my income died. And if my income died, I'd be exactly where Mom wanted me, crawling back, begging for the help she'd been weaponizing. I zoomed in on the photos. My breath caught. The background of the images wasn't my studio. It was a familiar granite countertop. Mom's kitchen. She hadn't just made up a story. She had taken books I'd gifted her over the years, books I had restored with love, and she had intentionally mutilated them to look like failed client work. I felt a wave of nausea, followed by a searing white-hot heat. This wasn't just a family spat anymore. This was a crime. I didn't call Mom. I gathered evidence. I pulled up my high-res before and after archive. Then a message from Isaac Davies, one of my most prestigious clients. "Ella, I saw the photos. I'm concerned. Can you explain this?" This was the tipping point. If I lost Isaac, I lost the contract that paid for Madison's tuition. I looked at Reed. He was staring at the door. Not an SUV, a black sedan. It was DeAndre. He looked like he hadn't slept in 48 hours, carrying a heavy cardboard box. "Ella," he said, his voice ragged. "I was at the house picking up my things. I found these in the trash in the garage, along with a receipt for a new burner phone." Inside the box were the mutilated books, and tucked into one was a handwritten note in Mom's elegant script, labeled Step 2. If she won't pay in cash, she'll pay in shame. Post these tonight. S. The smoking gun. Justice couldn't do it, so Mom did it herself. I'm filing for divorce tomorrow. I looked at the note. My mother's handwriting, the same hand that held mine as a child, was now holding the match to my life. The silence of those 10 minutes was absolute. I sat at my workbench, my eyes fixed on the digital clock, 9:42 a.m. Reed sensed the finality in the air. He didn't pace. He sat perfectly still by my chair, his weight leaning against my calf, watching the door. He knew his pack, the real one, was under fire. 9:45 a.m. My phone buzzed. A text from Justice. "Ella, please, Mom is having a breakdown. Don't call the police. Think of Madison and Isaac. Do you want their grandmother in handcuffs?" I thought of Madison and Isaac watching their mother be called a burden over a ham dinner. I thought of the $60,000 that could have been their college funds. 9:48 a.m. The Yelp page refreshed. The fake review, the photos of the mutilated books, vanished. 9:52 a.m. An email from Isaac Davies. "Ella, I received your documents. My God, I am so sorry. I'll be there tomorrow at 10 a.m. with the rest of the collection. Consider your retainer doubled." I let out a breath so jagged it felt like a sob. She actually did it, Reed. She actually tried to destroy me. Reed let out a soft, sympathetic whine and licked my wrist. At 10:05 a.m., a car pulled into the driveway. Anthony. He didn't come to the porch. He stood by his truck. "She's gone to stay with Justice," he called out. "She says she doesn't recognize you anymore." "That's because she never looked at me, Anthony. She only looked at what I could give her. Are you still planning to fix that pipe next week?" He looked at his boots. "I think it's better if I don't come around for a while." "Good," I said. "And Anthony, don't ask me for the deductible on your truck insurance. I've blocked the transfers." His head snapped up. Panic. He realized the Bank of Ella was officially closed. He drove away without another word.
I went back inside and sat on the floor with Reed. I picked up the destroyed copy of Great Expectations I'd given Mom for her 60th birthday. The spine was snapped. I can fix this, I told Reed. It'll have scars, but it will be stronger than before. But as I began to plan the restoration, my phone chimed one last time. Not from Mom, not from Justice, a message from a name I hadn't seen in years. It read, "Ella, I saw the drama. It's time you knew why your mother is so obsessed with your money. Check the safety deposit box your father left in your name, the one Mom told you was empty." The floor beneath me felt like it was shifting. The heist wasn't just in the present, it was in the past. The air in the bank's basement was cold and smelled of ozone and old paper. I sat in a small private viewing room, the safety deposit box sitting on the table like a lead weight. Reed wasn't allowed in the vault, so he was waiting in the car, his nose probably pressed against the glass, sensing that the scent of the Reed family was about to change forever. I slid the key into the lock. Mom had told me this box was empty. She told me my father had died with nothing but debts and a broken heart over my supposed failures. The lock turned with a heavy, satisfying click. I lifted the lid. It wasn't empty. It was overflowing with the blue and white carbon copies of a life Mom had spent 10 years trying to erase. There were bank statements, thousands of them, and a handwritten letter from my father dated 2 weeks before his passing. "To my Ella," it read. "I know your mother is worried about the future, but I've set aside $450,000 in a restricted trust for you and the kids. She can't touch the principal, but she knows the password to the dividends." My hands started to shake. The dividends, the small settlements Mom claimed to win, the bonuses Justice boasted about. It wasn't luck. It was my father's legacy, bled dry month by month, while I worked myself into the ground to pay for their emergencies. They hadn't just been leaning on me, they had been stealing the very floor my father built for me. I looked at the final statement. The trust was still there, but the dividend account was zeroed out. Every single month, like clockwork, a transfer was made to an account labeled S. Reed Personal. I realized then, Mom didn't want me to be successful. She needed me to be a mess so I would never go looking for the money she was siphoning away. I took a photo of the letter. I took a photo of the ledger. I felt a cold, crystalline anger replace the grief. It was one thing to be a safety net for a struggling family. It was another to be the victim of a decade-long heist orchestrated by the woman who gave me life. I closed the box and walked out past the bank teller, my heels clicking like a countdown on the marble floor. I got back to the car. Reed let out a sharp, urgent bark the moment I opened the door. He didn't just smell the bank air, he smelled the war. "We're going to a lawyer, Reed," I whispered. "Not a restorer, a reaper." I started the engine. The Bank of Ella wasn't just closed, it was about to file for a full public foreclosure, and I was going to make sure Mom paid every cent of the interest. The lawyer's office felt like a sanctuary of cold, hard facts. The air smelled of expensive mahogany and the kind of silence that exists when someone is about to lose everything. I sat in a high-backed leather chair, Reed curled at my feet. He didn't bark, he didn't even sniff the corners. He was the ultimate silent witness to the end of a dynasty of lies. When Mom walked in, she looked aged by a decade. Justice was behind her, eyes darting, looking for a way to spin the narrative. Anthony came last, hanging his head like a man who realized the floor he'd been standing on was a trap door. "Ella, honey," Mom started, her voice thin. "Your father, he wasn't himself. I was only trying to manage." "Stop," I said. The word wasn't a shout, it was a period. "I have the ledger, Mom. I have the dates. You didn't manage a trust. You embezzled from your own daughter while watching her work 16-hour days to pay your light bills." I slid the settlement across the table. "You will sign over the deed to the Cranston house. Anthony, you repay the insurance interest. Justice, you reimburse the mortgage bridge. Or DeAndre gets the full forensic audit." Justice gasped. You're going to leave us with nothing? No, I replied. I'm leaving you with the truth, which is more than you ever gave me. Mom looked at the pen. For the first time in 34 years, she didn't see a burden. She saw the woman who spent a decade fixing things that were broken, and she realized I was finally done mending her. She signed. They all did. As we walked out, the winter sun was low and gold. Anthony and Justice walked to their cars without looking back. Mom stood by her SUV looking at me one last time. "Are we still family, Ella?" she whispered. I looked at Reed waiting by my car door with a single hopeful wag. You can't just glue a life back together and pretend the damage didn't happen. Sometimes the most honest thing you can do is acknowledge the scar. We're people who share DNA, Mom, but family? Family is about showing up when the cameras are off and the checks aren't being signed. You missed your chance. I got into my car and drove away. That night, my house was quiet. I sat in my studio with a cup of tea, the $450,000 trust finally secured for Madison and Isaac. I picked up the mutilated copy of Great Expectations, the one Mom had shredded to ruin me. I began the slow, meditative process of cleaning the leather. It would take weeks. The scars would always be there, visible under the light. But as I worked, Reed let out a long, contented sigh and fell into a deep sleep at my feet. The book was being restored. My life was being rebuilt, and for the first time, I wasn't just the person holding the glue. I was the one finally worth saving.